Good evening. We are here today to discuss a significant and unfolding situation in the national capital, the deployment of the National Guard and the federalization of the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department by the President. This is not a moment for simple headlines, but for a thoughtful and comprehensive analysis of the situation, the reasons behind it, and its potential effects on our society. The events of this week have been nothing short of extraordinary. At a White House press conference, President Trump announced that he was formally declaring a public safety emergency in the District of Columbia. Citing this emergency, he invoked a seldom-used provision of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, specifically Section 740, to place the city's Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control. To back up this federal takeover, the president has ordered the deployment of approximately 800 National Guard troops, along with over 500 federal agents from agencies like the FBI, ATF, and D, to patrol the city's streets. The stated rationale for this dramatic action is rooted in the president's law and order platform. The administration has repeatedly pointed to a perceived surge in crime, highlighting a recent, high-profile assault on a former federal staffer as a key catalyst. The president has characterized the situation in D.C. as one of complete and total lawlessness, declaring this is Liberation Day in D.C. and we're going to take our capital back. He has used powerful, provocative language to describe the city as being overrun by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, and has even compared its safety record to that of some of the worst places on earth. This message is a clear appeal to his political base and aligns with a broader strategy of asserting federal power over cities, a tactic we've seen before in places like Los Angeles. However, a robust analysis requires us to examine the facts presented by the other side. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and other city officials have vehemently disputed the president's characterization of the situation. They have pointed to official data from the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department that shows a different reality. According to these figures, violent crime in the city has been on the decline since a post-pandemic peak in 2023, and overall, it is at a 30-year low. Mayor Bowser has publicly described the president's claims as hyperbolic and false, and has called the deployment an unnecessary and manufactured intrusion on local authority. This stark disagreement over the core facts on the ground is a central tension in this story, and it forces us to look beyond the immediate headlines. The legal and constitutional implications of this move are perhaps the most significant aspect of this analysis. The deployment raises serious questions about the balance of power between the federal government and local jurisdictions. The Posse Comitatus Act generally prohibits the use of active duty military for domestic law enforcement, though the National Guard operates under different rules. Unlike in other states where a governor is the commander-in-chief, the president has direct control over the D.C. National Guard. This unique status of the District of Columbia, which lacks full statehood, makes it particularly vulnerable to direct federal intervention. The invocation of Section 740 of the Home Rule Act is itself a highly significant move, granting the president temporary control over the police for federal purposes during an emergency. This authority is limited to a maximum of 30 days without congressional approval, and it has never been used in this specific manner before. This sets a powerful and controversial precedent for how presidential power can be exercised over urban governance, particularly as the administration is already facing a legal challenge in California over a similar deployment. Historically, presidents have deployed federal troops or the National Guard in domestic crises, but usually for large-scale insurrections or to enforce federal law against the will of a state, such as during the Civil Rights era. For example, President Eisenhower deployed troops to Little Rock to enforce school desegregation, and President Johnson did the same in Selma to protect civil rights marchers. The context here is different. The president is intervening over the objections of local leaders, not to enforce a federal court order, but to address a crime problem that the city's own data suggests is not an emergency. This has led some critics, including D.C. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, to label the action a historic assault on D.C. home rule and a soft launch of authoritarianism. Finally, we must consider the political and social effects. The move is widely seen as a political demonstration of power, a strong signal to a base that prioritizes a tough-on-crime stance. It also highlights the precarious position of D.C. as a non-state with limited autonomy. The D.C. Attorney General has stated his office is considering all of our options to protect the rights of residents, and calls for D.C. state have been reinvigorated by this event. The deployment of armed troops in a city, even for a limited time, can also create a climate of fear and distrust between residents and law enforcement. This raises fundamental questions about the role of the military in civilian life and the future of self-governance in our nation's capital. The political response is deeply divided. While the D.C. Police Union has expressed support for the temporary intervention, prominent Democrats, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have called the move illegitimate, with some proposing legislation to strip the president of this authority. In conclusion, the deployment of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., is far more than a simple law enforcement action. It is a collision of federal and local authority, a debate over the very definition of a public emergency, and a stark example of the ongoing political divisions in our country. Whether it is seen as a necessary restoration of order or an overreach of power, this action will undoubtedly have lasting effects on the Capitol and on the conversation about federalism and law enforcement in America. Thank you.